Hi, everyone. Welcome to One Drop at a Time.
We're a podcast that explores developing our relationship with the Savior and filling our lamp one drop at a time.
Thank you for taking the time to like and share our podcast. I'm starting.
Hey guys, it's a brand new year, and I can only read with these. I can't see. We are excited to be with you, and we apologize. Actually, I apologize. I got sick right after January. So now I can see the pattern. Last year was sick during Christmas. Now I'm sick just the New Year. So next year I won't be sick until February. But we're better. I'm better now, and we're so happy to be with you. We have a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So
No, seriously, it's going to be a great year.
yeah, we made it. We made it through the year, and now we're on to the next one, and we're happy to be with you.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of funny how you get a little reboost. You know how in the morning when you go to bed, everything seems so heavy. This is how like all the burdens of the day weigh you down, and then in the morning you wake up and you're like, I can do this. It's kind of the same with the new year,
It is, and all this time I've struggled with seasonal depression. I have realized, it ends like January 1st. I'm like, I don't even know if it's seasonal depression. It may even just be Christmas depression or holiday depression because there's
Stress.
so much stress and pressure through the holidays for me. And then January 1st, I'm like, I get to start again.
Yay.
Brand new. So today we are going to start about beginnings. We're going to talk about beginnings. We're going to focus on some miracles because that's what we like the very best is finding the Lord in our life in these small little details. So we're going to talk about miracles again today. And what we know for sure is that God doesn't just or hasn't just put us on this earth and said, okay, you figure it out. He's given us some things to help us to find him. He also is working on helping us have an experience that is so personal that we can hold on to and we can remember and we can say, I know there's a God.
Yeah, and oftentimes, especially in the beginning of your journey as a believer, you may have things that help. Some people start out with that core story, that first miracle that really sets them on the path and stuff. But if you've been a member all your life, I mean, if you've been a believer all of your life, or, if you're just in the trenches and you're just trudging along, sometimes those stories are kind of hard to isolate or to break apart from the regular fabric of your life.
Well, and maybe you weren't even born and raised Christian. Maybe you haven't, or maybe up until this point you haven't really recognized, my goodness.
Yeah.
God
But
does
maybe
the
you
things.
were,
And
and
maybe
you
you
take it
were.
for granted because you haven't not had those experiences. There's a sense of peace that you have as a Christian, that as a believer of Jesus Christ, that if you don't have it, sometimes you don't. I mean, if you've never not had it, you
Yeah.
don't recognize what you have, I think.
So I've been thinking about, okay, what was my pivotal experience? Okay, now I was born in I was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from the time I turned 8 years old, but I was brought up in the church. So I would go to church every Sunday with my family. It was quite a lot different back in the 1900s because we would go to sacrament meeting on Sunday at nighttime. I don't know if you
Yeah.
went at
Oh, yeah.
nighttime.
Oh, totally. Yeah. We went in the morning for Sunday school.
School night for
Was
sacrament.
it 2 hours in the morning? No, it was probably only an hour and a half.
Well, for us, it
Hour?
was an hour in the morning, an hour at night, and then we had mutual for an hour on Wednesday.
That's right. It was 3 hours. It was just not a block.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, a different time. And I, I thought about when did I have my first experience? And I don't know that I had a memorable church experience for me. There wasn't a time where I had that, like Brother Brown, a testimony of the gospel, and probably because I wasn't a convert. Like I was brought up in a family that, we read the scriptures all the time. We did all that. But the two probably real impactful experiences I had as a very young child, one before I even was baptized, was I remember one time having two dreams about Jesus, very vivid dreams. And one, I don't know if I was 6 years old, I was really small. And I remember seeing that Jesus was coming to our house, and I ran out to greet him, and he took me to our back garden, and we sat down on a bench and we had a really long conversation. And in that conversation, he said, I just want you to know you're going to go through some really hard things, but you'll get through them and I will be with you. And in this whole long conversation we had, that's the only part that I woke up with, which, maybe he was talking spirit to spirit with me, but I remember that story. I mean, it wasn't probably as impactful until I got older and I looked back and said, man, was he right about that? I did go through some hard things, but my second experience that again, probably was the first time that I really felt an overwhelming testimony that God was real, was finding that book on my parents' shelf. And it was a book about the prophets, and it was a miracle book. And in the miracle book were lots of miracles that the prophets had. And one was a miracle story about Wilford Woodruff. And I know I mentioned his story again, but in case you didn't check in on an earlier one, he was out doing missionary work with his family. Some of his family members stayed in the home, and he and his wife and one child stayed in the wagon. And then, of course, the other missionary was in his wagon. And he woke up in the middle of the night hearing a voice where he said, God told me to go move the wagon. And he said, I got up and I moved it. I got back in bed, got nice and comfortable because it was a cold night. It was a windy, cold night. And as soon as I got back into bed, then he heard the voice again, go move your donkey. And so he literally moved his donkey out of the way. And as soon as he got back into bed, the windstorm was so strong, it blew the tree that they were parked under clear down, and it landed in the direct spot where their wagon was. He said, had we not moved the wagon, we would not have lived to tell the tale. And I remember the spirit testifying to me because it was such a shock. I never heard of a miracle before that. And it was such a shock to think that God would tell somebody to move their wagon. And I remember the spirit testifying to me that if he could receive a message like that, if he could receive a miracle like that, so could I. That was such an impactful, overwhelming spiritual experience
How
that
old
I'll
do you think?
never forget. I was 15 when I had that one.
15.
And those were my very first two really memorable, impactful experiences I had that I can't ever let go. Brother Brown said in his talk that he gave in 2025 October, he said, these experiences that we have, they're eternal. They're not something that just continues to exist here, but it's something that exists elsewhere. It isn't something that will ever be forgotten. We could choose to forget and maybe we won't remember, but they're written down. They're in the book of miracles somewhere.
Yeah, and these are the things. This is
Mhm.
the stuff we're talking about. These are not. This didn't like save Jenny's life on that day, or there wasn't something supernatural that happened, but they were both a miracle in your mind, a miracle of perspective, a miracle of knowledge given to you by the spirit, from God. Like, it's kind of interesting because you had these experiences that they meant more to you as you progressed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you didn't even notice at the time, this is a miracle. You wouldn't have said that. But, oh, I had this dream and it stuck with you. And that's the miracle of it.
I did have this other little dream when I was really, really young. And in the dream, Jesus was walking down the street, and I realized I hurried and cleaned up all the toys and I just shoved them in the closet. And then I realized he could see through the closet door. That was the end of the dream, and he knows my chaos. God is aware of my chaos, and he's still coming. And that's something also, it's impactful to me now because I can understand my brain, and my brain is ADHD. It is very chaos oriented. I work great in chaos. And that was a wonderful message that I could look back on and say, he knows, and he's still coming to me.
It gets you.
He still gets me, he still loves me. Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. I was just thinking, as like what was my conversion process? Because Jenny's life was she started in the gospel and then everything fell out and then she had to come back to it because her
Yeah.
parents took her out. So I didn't have that experience, and my life was more just doing all this stuff, going to seminary, but I never felt like I knew if I felt a spirit. That was a constant question that I had. And I went to BYU, and I decided to go on a mission. Like, I didn't really want to go, but I had said, well, if I hit this age, I've hit 21 back in the day, then I'm going to go. And then I hit 21. I'm like, I got to go. And then I had some cool experiences with Afterglow. Remember Afterglow, the
Yeah.
music?
Yeah.
Listening to them, they're super inspirational. Like, okay, I want to go on a mission. So I went on my mission, and it was interesting because I had read the Book of Mormon several times. So I wasn't somebody that had never read it. And I loved the Book of Mormon a lot. And so I could easily show that, but I had a hard time feeling like I knew. I felt like I had to have something different than what I had to be able to say I know the church is true. And so I went in the room next door and my companion was in the other room and I just really prayed. I just prayed the hardest I'd ever prayed. I needed to know. And I felt like I was just full of light, but it was like I was effervescent. I just had this feeling like lightness of spirit and just this happy, bubbly feeling that just filled me up. And I remember it's so funny because like for 3 or 4 days after that, it kind of lasted this feeling. But I did not put it together that as a witness of the Lord for years, years. Like I was asking him for this spiritual experience, but I didn't get the spiritual experience. And what I really got was I love the scriptures. I just love the scriptures and I love the doctrine that every single human soul is a beloved child of God. And there is no one that God doesn't care about saving. And that to me, like I could testify about that all day. And that's where was I knew that there was a plan that was going to give everybody a chance. So several years later, when I've read scriptures and I've prayed and I've done all these things, and my testimony has built like grain of sand upon grain of sand, like
Yeah.
very slowly, turning one page at a time. Then I was like, wait a minute, what was that experience? I just didn't get it. So now I'm like, oh. So really for me, my testimony grew, line upon line, even more like dot upon dot.
Well, I think that's a beautiful pattern, what we're seeing, even right as we're talking, because I haven't really thought about it in depth this way. But in both of our cases, we had an experience, and maybe we didn't even recognize what the
Yeah,
experience
totally
was
didn't.
until we were mature enough spiritually to say, I see what you did.
Yes,
I see
yes.
what you did.
Yeah, it's like later, you have to get to be almost 60.
You are
Almost.
so on the cusp. You're almost
Seriously.
59.
Yeah, I'm almost 59. But it's like the patterns start showing themselves. You start seeing just the little blessings, just the little tender mercies. I went to South Africa on my mission and they called tender mercies barmhartighede, and it means tender heartednesses. And it's like somehow that word, it's just like God's like, you're so cute. He just wants to help us because
Yeah.
he just has a soft spot for us. I love. But anyway, I think once you start seeing those patterns, then you can go back and you can look at some of the things that have happened and all of a sudden the pieces start falling into place.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful that we talk about learning line upon line because that's probably what we're going to end with. We're going to try and keep these short, 15 minutes at the most. We learn line upon line. We can't expect to be in a place down here and God's going to give us knowledge clear up here and us literally understand. It just takes time. And
Yeah.
we've all had an experience. We may have to dig for it. And if you haven't, or you don't feel like you've had a little experience, a tender mercy, something, look for it. Ask the Lord. Now's the time to start finding Him in our life.
Yeah, it really is a matter of conscious effort. Sometimes something big I mean, everybody's so different. People sometimes do have a big experience, but so much more often the Lord will I mean, he's working with our minds and our spirits all the time. And sometimes with our physical presence.
Mhm.
But it's learning to look in your mind and see, did God just throw a pebble in my river?
Yeah.
The tiny little sound. Wait, I heard that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we challenge you. If you've had a little experience and you recognize what it was, even if it's from 10 years ago, I'm reminded of my niece, Tammy, who shared a faith bomb about her experience having a difficult time in music coming to her at 15. Try and remember your first experience. We want to hear it. Be the follower that makes a comment below so that we can kind of have a community. We can have a conversation about it because this year is our year of miracles, not just little miracles, all kinds of miracles. And in order to have all those miracles, we need yours too.
Yeah,
So,
please. Please remember, like Brother Brown said, they're gonna last forever. So
yeah.
you might as well polish them off, dust them off, put them on your chain, your pearl chain
Yep.
and
Yep.
start saving them.
All right, you guys. Till next time. We'll see ya.